Seminar this morning on water issues. This morning we have Sadie Neuman with us. Sadie is a Minnesota GreenCorps member, and for those who were with us a few minutes ago, I mentioned that during the summer we really like to have GreenCorps members talk about their work to our group because it's really interesting to see the kind of work that they've been doing as GreenCorps members around the state for the past year. Sadie is a GreenCorps member with the city of Rochester. Rochester's water resources team, where her work, she said, is focused on collaborative planning, inclusive community engagement, environmental education, and behavioral change. She's going to talk today about Rochester's smart salting neighborhood and business pilot programs and why the city chose to use community-based social marketing rather than traditional community education and outreach to improve local water quality. Sadie Neuman holds a BS in geoscience from Winona State University, and where she writes, she also studied political science and mass communications, as well as a master's in public affairs. I think I have that right, Sadie, and a master of science in environmental science from Indiana University's O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, where her work was focused on water resources, policy and management. She has a wide variety of professional experiences working in local government, academia, nonprofits, and small businesses. She describes herself as an avid volunteer and serves in multiple leadership roles on local, state, and regional boards and so forth. Sadie, it is great to have you with us this morning. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has been putting into the chat what you've had experience with, whether it's participating in interdepartmental collaboration, engaging with the public, or responding as a participant. This is great to know. I've seen a lot of 1, 2, and 3s in here. So this is going to be a little chat about collaborative and community-based stormwater management. Hi, my name is Sadie. I am working with the City of Rochester, and normally in a more professional kind of setting, this is the headshot that everybody likes me to use. But just so you have a little idea of how this talk is going to go, this is really me. This is what I look like. I hate taking pictures and being in front of a camera. I'm a little bit goofy, and I really prefer informal to formal. So I highly encourage you, and please ask that you engage when questions come up, and we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to give you some background about me just so you understand the rest of this talk and where I'm coming from. Undergrad, as Mark had said, BS in geoscience, communications and journalism. Grad school was policy and water resources. And then I am a person who takes advantage of any training I can possibly get. And so I have had the privilege of participating in Project WET, Minnesota Water Stewards. I've worked with the Access Fund doing trail building with them. I've gone through a couple of the smart salting. I've worked on the IAP2, which if you all know that, it's all about public participation. I am water bar certified. I recently participated in Community Climate Communicators and just gave a workshop on it at the RSDP's summit the other week. And of course, leadership stuff. So, like I said, a lot of different jobs. I've worked in a number of different areas. I've had a lot of customer service facing work, which I think really prepared me a lot better for working in community engagement. I've had a number of opportunities to work on my own and kind of figure it out for myself what works best, which can both be really fulfilling as well as incredibly nerve-wracking. And that relates to what's coming up. Leadership and service. This is just to show you the breadth of things that I've been involved with. Everything from like clubs and recycling to Nerd Night. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's an international thing. It is a way to like either personally nerd out and talk about stuff or listen to other people nerd out and talk about stuff. I'm on a lot of steering committees and working groups. I've served on a couple of boards. I'm kind of doing a trial and error right now to find out where I am most effective and useful. About me and identities, this is kind of like anxiety stoking to show everyone, but it is important later on. I am a person, I'm in science, but a huge role that I play in life is a caretaker right now, and it's tough. I am generally a questioner. I'm like a skeptic. I'm also an empath. I'm neurodivergent. I am seen a lot as a disruptor. I've lived my whole life as low income. First generation college student, love outdoor recreation, lots of communication, that kind of thing. So that's where my life lens comes from. If you haven't done this yourself, I encourage you just to like think about what are your identities or perspectives and like how do you view the world, and it kind of helps you the next time you interact with public, think about how their view might be different in some way. So first, we're going to chat about smart salting. And this presentation, because you'll have heard from a couple of other GreenCorps members on smart salting, I'm not going to tell you about the training or about chlorides or anything like that. I'm going to go through what we used to develop our smart salting program in the city of Rochester. So first, please throw in the chat. There is no wrong answer. Nobody's going to be shamed or get in trouble. This is new to so many people, including me a year ago. Please put into the chat what your salt scatter pattern looks like when you salt your driveway, your sidewalk, whatever, in the winter. Ones, twos, and threes. No salt. Ugh, this group knows it already. Well, wonderful. So you all are likely smart salters. You've probably been through this training before and you know all about it, which is great. So the next thing I'm going to ask you is to type into the chat what you have done prior or what your experience is with education and outreach. Have you designed materials for education and outreach? Have you given presentations? Have you hosted workshops, or have you provided technical assistance as a part of your outreach? This is great. We have a huge variety. We definitely span all of them. There are people here with 1, 2, 3, and 4, some with just one, and that's wonderful. So one more question. How did that go with your community outreach? Do you think it was effective? And thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I don't know if that was an answer to the last one or this one, but you can answer, you know, a spread. Have some of them gone super? You think whoever you were chatting with walked away like totally changed and on board and really stoked? Has it been pretty good? Seemed influenced moderately well. We had a decent chat. So, they didn't want to talk too much, or I will never do that again. And me personally, I've had all 5 experiences, not just in this term, but throughout all of my experience engaging with the public. 2 through 3, 3, yeah. Big variety, yep. Well, I hope they have all been in some way fulfilling for you. My therapist likes to say, you know, do things that fill your cup. And I hope all of these things, when you engage with the public, it fills your cup rather than kind of diminishes what's in it. So if anybody wants to throw into the chat anything about your experience in particular, if you have some like additional thoughts on it, and if nothing, that's fine, we can move on. All right. So next question. Have you heard of community-based social marketing? 1, yep, I've heard of it. 2, I have used it. 3, I have no idea what you're talking about. Cool. 3s. Yay, so this will be useful for you. I haven't seen a 2 yet. Okay. Yay. So, very first thing, we talked about education and outreach. A lot of people here have experience with it. Education and outreach affects the public's knowledge of a topic. It affects their attitudes and their perceptions. However, unfortunately, researchers, social scientists have found that it does not affect behavior, because for some reason, even though people know what the right thing to do is and they think people should be doing it, it doesn't always result in them performing that behavior or acting that way that they think is right, even though they think it's right. Some folks came up with community-based social marketing in order to specifically achieve those actions. And so community-based social marketing affects someone's knowledge, behaviors, and their self-image, which is important. So community-based social marketing has kind of this circular method to it. 1, you select a behavior to promote. 2, you identify the benefits and barriers to performing that behavior. 3, you develop strategies to help someone perform those behaviors. 4, some people skip this. I highly recommend you don't. You pilot test that strategy. And 5, well, you come up with the pilot test, and then 5, you implement it and evaluate it and see how it went. And if it didn't go well, then try again. So 1, the selecting behaviors to promote. When you choose a behavior, you have to narrow it down or break it down to the most specific endpoint. I encourage you to think about probably that elementary school practice that you did when they said, write out all the steps to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And you probably said, put the peanut butter on the bread or toast, put the jelly on it, and put it together and eat. And they said, ha ha ha, you're wrong, which is really hurtful. And then they told you to really break it down into all the steps of like unscrew the jar and put the knife in the jar and then spread. Those are the kinds almost that we're talking about, like a really endpoint behavior. And so when we're starting with this, when you're choosing, you kind of think like, what's the low-hanging fruit in terms of those behaviors? Because even though you're just targeting one single, like maybe seems too easy and doesn't make that big of a change, because community-based social marketing affects your self-image, this will have a cascade effect. So when a person performs behaviors that they think are environmentally friendly, especially if it's kind of the first time that they've done it, it's like a little light bulb goes off and they start to see themselves as, I am the type of person who performs these behaviors. And I don't know sociology or psychology that well, but that works on folks. And then they are much more likely to do more things, either continue and do better with that topic or whatever it is, or even move on to other things and start engaging in other ways with workshops or presentations or volunteer events. So our one endpoint that we got to was trying to change the term or the phrase that you think of when thinking about winter, snow, and ice. When in doubt, put it out. We had a great presentation internally at City of Rochester and from Dan in Rhodes, and he had talked about how they changed this mindset. This was their mindset, and their goal was to change that mindset. And I loved it. And we kind of used the same exact thing within when we were targeting both businesses as well as residents. And so our one goal, our end point, was just to make them think about scatter. So those 5 different patterns that I showed you earlier, and all of you said 1 through 3, those are the patterns that we're talking about. That's all we were trying to do, is affect that pattern. So in order to identify the benefits and barriers, you do things like surveys and focus groups. When you find the benefits, those come in the way of finding about somebody's values, about their priorities, about their motivators. When you are trying to ask questions that get at someone's barriers. You're trying to target, like, what are their mental blocks about it? What are maybe their physical limitations to being able to perform that action, or maybe even financial barriers? In order to identify those benefits and barriers, you can use a number of different methods. Digital surveys, so we use Polko with City of Rochester. Other people use SurveyMonkey. There's, a multitude of options nowadays. Intercept surveys, so you hang out in one spot and you intercept people as they are walking by and you ask them to fill something out. You can either have a QR code to the virtual, or you can have actual paper that they can fill out, doesn't matter. Mailer surveys. This one is definitely the old way that we used to do it, and it's tough. It doesn't quite fill your cup when you see the number that come back, or tabling. So, developing strategies. After finding our benefits and our barriers, we took those and we used the benefits to be able to identify the messaging or incentives that we had along with our kit. And we used the barriers to help us figure out what tools or assistance people needed. And with us, we had found that people really care about water quality. They actually really, really value water quality. They think a lot about it. They think it's super important. And some of the barriers that people have is they didn't know what proper salting looked like. And I was one of those people. I had no clue that my rock salt that I put down in the winter affected our local waterways. And I didn't know what the scatter pattern was supposed to look like. So we developed tools to be able to help residents and businesses perform those behaviors, and to remind them that by performing those behaviors, you are protecting your local surface waters, which you say you really value. And so this is a little picture of the kit. On our cup, we made sure to talk about scatter matters. We used this one cup because most people had told us that the way that they scatter is either with their hand or with a mug or a cup of some sort. And so we figured just swap it out. Give them a cup to use instead that has the information that they need on it. So it's that visual reminder, it's in their hand every time they're using it. We also gave them a little trifold pamphlet with a lot of information and education to try and tie the values in the clean water to this behavior and the different things you can do. We gave them a sticker they can stick on their salt bucket or on their shovel, again, to be a great reminder. And we even gave them a window sticker because these social scientists have learned that when you make a public commitment to something, you are so much more likely to go through with it. You are going to hold yourself accountable out of shame and guilt, which I think it's okay that we tap into that we are holding ourselves accountable in some way by making our commitment visible. Our little trifold pamphlet just looks like this. And a lot of our online messaging looks like this. So we make sure to not only tell people that your greens should be 3 inches apart, but we also show what that looks like. We remind them again that it only takes a teaspoon to permanently pollute 5 gallons, and you all know all of this stuff. So when you pilot test strategies, you find a sample population. For us, we did 3 different sample neighborhoods that we thought between the 3 of them could best represent all residents within town. We had one neighborhood that was a totally kind of new development. And so it's just like a, circle around. It doesn't really connect. It's not through streets. Everybody that lives there has their own little sidewalk that goes around and in front. A newer looking neighborhood. We had one that was an old neighborhood. And so these houses have been around for a long time. A lot of the people within this neighborhood, it's a mix between older families or older individuals as well as young families. And then we had another neighborhood that represented more of the immigrant population and a ton of kids and students. And so we were trying to target neighborhoods where we figured people might be concerned about those slipping and falling. So you're mainly concerned about people with mobility issues or older individuals, and you're concerned about kids, right? And so we figured within these neighborhoods, it would also provide a good idea of people's priorities when it comes to salting. Also, you got to make sure that you get a baseline. So you do your pre-assessment. So before you tell anybody about what you're doing or even talk to them about their scatter pattern, you just put out a survey to, again, identify those benefits and barriers just to make sure that you have a baseline for your sample population to compare to afterwards. So then, implementing and evaluating your strategies. Again, we handed out those smart salting kits. I learned the hard way. It is illegal to put something in someone's mailbox. That is for U.S. Postal Service only. They were very kind, though, in telling me that I can't do that. So we had to just put them on doorsteps. So we walked around all of these neighborhoods. We handed out all of these kits, and we did 2 of these pilots kind of simultaneously. We did one with neighborhoods and we did one with businesses. And so we sent out those pre-surveys to each of them. And for the sample population of businesses, we just did downtown businesses so that we would have a closer area. We know that these people are really concerned about traffic, and it would be easier for us to deliver all of these kits. And then afterwards, this is the point where we're at now. It's been a whole year and people are starting to think about their salting. So now we're going to send out our post-assessment to see, did that information that we gave people really last and stay with them until this point? Are they thinking about the association between their winter salting and that clean water that they say that they value? And this is, it was a fairly cold winter, so I was very enthusiastic that I had found a pair of children's Carhartts that were on super sale that I could throw on as I delivered all of these kits. My supervisor, Stephanie, definitely had to call me one time as we were on our very last day of delivering kits. We only had, like 100 left to hand out, and it started to snow, and it was so slippery and bad. And she called me. She's like, "You need to come back right now." And both of us were the kind of people who have a hard time like leaving something when there's just that much left. So we had to do one extra day after that. An extra bonus for us is that while we were handing out kits, the local news found out about it. And so there's this Our Town channel, and they do a little bit that's called Walkabout. And so I think it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds that I had. And this was a funny style of interview. There's a link online if you really want to be able to find it. But we have no idea how many people this reached or what kind of impact it had. So it was hard to be able to measure it, but fun nonetheless. So implementing and evaluating, this is where we're going to pick up again this year. So stay tuned. I'll give another presentation next summer. So one last thing, type in the chat if you have heard of smart salting or attended smart salting training. Heard of, attended. Cool. So for those who don't know, or those who haven't attended, what you can personally do right now is attend one of these smart saltings. Or I think Leah presented earlier on her mini course program that she did. That is also online for free, and I highly encourage everyone to check those out. The other thing you can do is winterize your own expectations. Try and think about, like, is this sidewalk supposed to be totally clean? Or do I need to be more careful? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to allocate more time to get somewhere? Be a person who spreads the word, talk about it. That is the single most effective way of getting someone to change their behavior, is like neighbor to neighbor or colleague to colleague, friend to friend kind of conversations. That is the most influential to someone. So you truly make a difference when you talk about things. Become a neighborhood smart salter. That's something we're going to start up this winter, is just have an ambassador program. We're going to hook them up with the smart salting trainings, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to work with the Isaac Walton League and their winter salt watch and be able to take some samples of water around town And while they can't be used for official purposes with PCA, they will at least be some good indicators for them to try and better target where they should be investing and sampling in town. So I'll just leave you with scatter matters. Next, we'll talk about the Comprehensive Surface Water Management Plan. To orient you a little bit, I know that there are folks within this that are not from southeastern Minnesota, and so a huge thank you to my PCA mentor, Matt, who reminded me as I was chatting about this presentation with him yesterday that not everybody knows where you are, so maybe you should orient folks and tell them a little bit about Rochester and Olmsted County. And so if you are familiar with southeastern Minnesota, you know that we are very karsty. If you're not familiar, now you know. Olmsted County is kind of in this little like boot area. It's not quite on the river. It's a little bit inward. If you're the type of person who likes a geologic map, I am too. Maybe not terribly easy to see, but we also have a lot of glacial till in this area. We are also, the city is located up on the Decorah edge. So we are within the Zumbro River watershed, and it's a watershed that spans all the way to the Mississippi River. We're kind of at the bottom of it, if you can see that little grayed area towards the bottom right of the watershed. On the left, we have an image of the boundaries of Rochester, as well as our main waterways that come through. Our main waterways include Cascade Creek, Zumbro River, and there are a lot of forks to it. Willow Creek, Badger Run, Bear Creek, Silver Creek, Hadley Creek, Mayo Run. There's also a Kings Run in there somewhere. And on the right, it just shows all of the sub-watersheds that are within it. So it's kind of fun to see the fact that the city is centrally located kind of at a center of a number of different sub-watersheds. And so we deal with a lot of them. This is just the very beginning of the 1999 Stormwater Management Plan. That is the last time that the city put together a stormwater management plan or surface water management plan. And I'm actually really interested. I didn't make a slide about this. Throw in the chat if you have ever worked on a stormwater management plan or a surface water management plan. I'm intrigued. This one, they had originally finalized it in 1997, but they made some revisions in 1999. If you are an MS4 person, you know that this is because of PCA rules and MS4 permits. So their executive summary let you know that their way of engaging with the community, which they did say was really important, was in forming a steering committee to be able to provide input from various sectors of the community and guide the plan development. It was comprised of community residents, business representatives, developers, engineers, consultants, local, state, and federal agency representatives. And this is just kind of their vision or their intent for the plan. And so what I want to point out here is that they, in 1999, really saw that there needed to be a balance between development and natural resources that still meets the needs of the individuals, businesses, and communities. So now we're going to talk about community engagement. So put in the chat a 1 if you yourself have worked on a project where you hosted community engagement of some sort, and a 2 if you have participated in community engagement. Cool. 1s and 2s. So with our comprehensive surface water management plan, our engagement spanned a number of different methods. We didn't rely on one single steering committee. Instead, we utilized our full water resources team. We've also reached out to every single city department, which, as if you work in a large agency, you know that that is difficult to do, but we made it happen, and we're so grateful to everyone. We have definitely connected with other natural resource agencies that are in our area. We do not have watershed districts. I forgot to mention that earlier. So we don't have those managers. We connected with businesses and developers and residents. So if you all could throw in there, what methods have you used for engagement? None. Okay. Brochures, displays, yeah. Those are the things that can like hang out all the time, even when you're not there. Speaking, definitely. Town halls, love them. Well, you all know there are a number of different ways that you can engage with the community. Mailers, yeah, flyers, for sure. And just let me know really quick, how do you think it went? Was it super, pretty darn good, moderate, so-so, or it may have been a waste of your time, you think? And again, personally, not just in this GreenCorps term, but throughout all of my professional career, I've experienced all of the above. 2 and 3, yeah, that's where most people have told me that they end up. It helps when you have good news. Yeah. Elizabeth is so positive. She'll never say never. All right, so the ways that we decided to use engage, or I guess the modes or methods, we use some asynchronous, and so that involved both digital, well, we're mostly pandemic, so it was mostly digital for the asynchronous work that we had people engage with. We had a lot of virtual meetings. We had a couple of in-person meetings, which were very exciting. We had, of course, a digital survey, as almost everybody has, and we had an advisory group. And this was all just the engagement for phase 1. We are right now entering phase 2. So everything I'm talking about is phase 1 so far, like the scoping to put together vision, priorities, goals, concerns, things like that. So we had, I want to tell you all, we had an experience where we had this idea of how to function within pandemic times when it wasn't super great for us to get together. Cases were rising again, didn't feel like it was appropriate or safe to try and put everybody in one room to do this. At that time, we tried doing using Miro and getting people to reply on these maps by looking at it. But we got very little engagement with it. It was very confusing. People had a lot of questions about how they should be responding. And so we took a step back. We took some time. We worked with our absolutely phenomenal consultant, Jen Cater. She is with Freshwater. Use her if you can. We worked out with her this idea of doing visual strategy mapping instead. She had used it in the past. It went really well. And we said, okay, we'll go with it. The way that we did this, Jen and my supervisor, Stephanie, and I, we took a whole day and we had, they were like hour and a half or so meetings. And we broke them into these different groups. So those who were interested in giving feedback on resilience and environmental stewardship came to that one. Fiscal responsibility, public and private infrastructure, equity and safety, public waters and recreation, and anybody could come to as many as they wanted or whichever ones fit into their schedule. But this was an internal city teammate exercise that we did, and we invited all across all of the departments to be able to engage with this so we could truly have a comprehensive surface water management plan. And then, thanks to Jen, we found a way to take that, and it was literally on boards on the wall and sticky notes and writing things out physically with pen and paper. And we took the time, Jen and Stephanie did a lot, to take that and then put it in this digital form so that we could all access it asynchronously from all of our different areas that we were in and all work on it and edit it. And so she developed a system to be able to show, the links between things, because one of our goals with this is to be able to pair together co-benefits. We made sure to kind of color code things to categorize and make a little bit more sense. We kind of stacked things that were similar just to like aggregate and synthesize in a meaningful way. You can see in this, so we had our color coding down and our arrows and our topics. It was a big effort. What came of that are all of these kinds of things. And so there was a lot of talk about accessibility and safety and accountability. And the keywords at the very end were environmental health, quality of life, vibrancy, equity or equitable, resilient, and proactive. We also put out a digital survey. We gave a survey to our city teammates, we gave a survey to developers, and we gave a survey to the community. They were all fairly similar. They were some version of this. And so you can see in here, we had a couple of nice, on the evaluator's end, nice questions of like, pick these, and it'll just, give you some numbers. A nice little bar graph is what you get. But really, when we're talking about water and your experiences and your concerns, it is more nuanced than being able to check a box. And so we offered a lot of write your answer here, which meant that we ended up doing a ton of coding in the end. And again, shout out to Jen and her grad student, Lila. They did incredible work. We had an outrageous number of tabs in a spreadsheet together coding all of this. The teammates really talked about more opportunities to access, enjoy, and recreate, greater awareness about environmental issues, prioritizing clean water, protect existing, restore degraded, and support more biodiversity and wildlife, and then creative solutions for BMPs. The developers really wanted to focus on partnerships and early engagement. They wanted transparency and trust. They also wanted to protect surface waters while holding space for innovation. And they wanted things to be more streamlined and clear and simplified. Our community survey, we got back just a wide variety of concerns and answers. And some of them were very similar, but different enough in a way that we just wrote out all of these, and we kind of sat with this for a while and took it all in. Then, because as some may know, when you do community surveys, especially digital, they go out in an email or you check a website, there is a population of people who engage with that, who pay attention to that, who are aware of that, who are just like in tune with that kind of thing. But the majority of your community is not. And it can be really frustrating when you take a lot of time to put out those surveys and you only get a 5 to 10% of your population maybe responds, which is normal. So in order to make sure that you are getting that representative sample, like we talked about with the pilots that we did for the smart salting, you have to find other ways to go out and engage with the community. And because of the demographics of our survey, we did ask people optional if they wanted to tell us. Their demographics were all fairly similar. And so we wanted to make sure that we reached out to the communities or people who had perspectives that were different from those that were answered in the survey. So we used an advisory group that was modeled after a co-design goal, but it was not a true co-design process. Because we did not start our entire process with this co-design. But we did, of course, try and meet all of the same kind of goals. And so we meaningfully included diverse voices within. The community members were selected. We didn't quite select them, but we reached out to a ton of different groups within the community that do interact with or serve the communities that we wanted to make sure that we hear from. And that very much included those who have special needs for places that they visit, those who need to know more about what's there or safety, or people who rely on those waterways maybe for fishing. And so within this, you bring in your advisory group. And the cool thing about co-design is that you don't just hear from the people that you have in the room. You have a second meeting, and between those, you ask them to go out into the community and chat with their friends and their family and the people that they're connected with, and also gain their feedback, and then come back with us, and we have those, longer, more in-depth conversations about what they got. And again, we went through with this coding, and we had, just in the number of answers, like one answer per line, we had more than 200 lines, and our focus group was only 6 people. So we thought they did a fantastic job, and we we asked them to maybe kind of identify like who they're getting a response from, so we could maybe make sure that we associate, or if we have questions about something, be able to reach out to a community organization that serves a population that might have had a very special kind of thing to say that was unique, and we wanted to know more about it. So like I said, that was all phase one. Phase two, we are working on a website for everyone, because now we're going to start talking about strategies, and that is truly where people wanted to go. With these surveys, we found that people just wanted to talk about what they want immediately. They wanted to talk about concrete things and what it looks like, rather than kind of these more abstract vision and concerns and goals. And so we need to make sure that we have a very robust website that allows for a bunch of different kinds of communication and gives people all the information that they need, including things like timelines, who's working on this project, and who can you contact about it. Maybe some frequently asked questions. In an ideal world, we could have a public-facing Q&A, so people see the question and they see the response and who responded. We are also going to be engaging in 3 different group activities. The first one is following community resilience building. That's actually a thing. You can Google it. It's a whole process on its own, and it's a way to help identify your assets within the community and vulnerabilities as it pertains to broader climate change, which of course is relevant to surface water, but we've also kind of modified it in a way to really focus on surface water. We also are super fortunate that we received a grant from PCA to be able to conduct a true co-design to identify the needs of a community resilience hub in town. Again, kind of a new thing, a little bit of a buzzword. You can Google it. There's plenty out there about it. And third, we're going to have a more broad advisory group that looks something more like a steering committee that will be invited to a number of our meetings throughout the process as we go along over the next 6 months. So do you want me to keep sharing or stop sharing?
So if you can stop sharing, if that's the end of your presentation, and if people have questions, type them into the chat, and I think Sadie can see what's typed in the chat, as well as we can repeat them. So feel free to ask questions or make comments there for Sadie. Sadie, really interesting presentation on how you are able to engage the public in these really important concerns and matters down there. I do have a question for you as people think of questions to type into the chat. So when you are engaging the public, one of the things that crosses my mind is, do you feel like you're tapping um, into concerns that people already have and are waiting to express out there? Or do you feel like your job is to, for lack of a better term, instigate and get people to think about? Or is it some combination of those things? Is there like a wellspring of concern out there that you feel like is just waiting for the avenue and the tap to be expressed?
Yep, there sure is. Everybody has got their concerns and they love to voice them. And we love to hear them. We just have to remember to not take it personally. And so, especially with the survey, we flat out asked, what are your concerns? And by far, the biggest things that we heard about were water quality and the water being swimmable, fishable, feeling safe paddling within those areas. And then the other thing, I guess, that we heard about was safety. And that included a lot of things that are more relevant to actions that Parks and Recreation and Forestry control. So they had talked about all of those, the walking paths that are around the waterways or the beaches, the access to them. And so again, it really just reinforced for us that it's so important to be working with our other departments. And we are fortunate enough that we have phenomenal people in Parks and Forestry, and they were on board to engage with us and to learn about the kind of feedback that we're getting and also provide as much as they can for us. And so that we didn't have to instigate anything at all. They had them ready to go, and we're glad to hear them. With the our advisory group, it did offer us an opportunity to kind of go deeper within that. Most people don't know what stormwater is. I didn't really know what stormwater was, like all that it encompassed, until I was in grad school and somebody told me they worked in it. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And then they talked more about it. I was like, oh, actually, this is super interesting. And it involves green infrastructure, that buzzword that's going around right now. And it was an opportunity to kind of also make that connection for the people within that group. And so in that way, it kind of instigated more conversations because it opened up their idea of what they should be thinking about. And then it like unlocked just an outpouring of, oh, well, I want to talk about this and this and this and this. But of course, never do we say like, don't you really hate XYZ?
Yeah, that's what's really interesting to me about your presentation and the talks that I've given on different subjects. It seems to open up avenues that you didn't know existed before. It seems like you get feedback that overlaps with other areas or issues that you really hadn't thought about, and it kind of opens up new ways of approaching things that hadn't occurred to me. And it seems like that's what you encountered as well.
Definitely. One of the other big things that we've been hearing kind of from all these different ways of engaging, especially with the community, is that they are really interested in learning more. So they want to be educated more. The tough part is going to be finding out like what that best method is, like how do they learn best? So talking about learning styles, and thank you, Elizabeth, for multiple intelligences. Also talking about like what mode do they go to most for finding information? Do they like to go online and read something? Do they want a pamphlet or a door hanger at their home? Do they want to go to a workshop or be a part of a longer term training? And so that's something that we are thinking about as we go along, especially in partnership again with Parks and Forestry, because the areas are just so intertwined. We overlap in so many ways, and there are a multitude of groups even in town that have an interest in this kind of thing. Birders. I learned that birders are incredibly passionate and vocal people. They will show up to a lot of meetings if you have them. And they really want to make sure that that habitat is taken care of. And so being able to hear from them and know that not only do they want some more information, and they also want to be involved in decision making going forward, but they want to be able to participate. They want to be stewards. A lot of people want to be stewards. You can think of like master gardener groups. You can think of the birders. There are paddlers. We even actually have a couple of mountain bikers that are super stoked on participating in being able to pair recreation and conservation together, which is so phenomenal. And so really, that was kind of a surprise. It's something that you hope for. You wish the community would want to be stewards and help you out with stuff and be involved in protecting and preserving and enhancing their own community. But this process really kind of showed us that, like, yes, they do. They do too. They're in it.
Well, I know that I'm sure that people listening right now have their thoughts and musings on this as well. I know that I've talked to a few people in our audience right now about, a lot of times the work we do, the technical work we do ends up in reports, that we put on the web or try to get out there to the public. And, a lot of times I wonder, and I think other people wonder too, how effective is that, right? I mean, it's one thing to produce a report, and there's very important information, very important data that we put a lot of time, effort, and money into. And it's another thing to do the kind of thing you're doing, and that is to engage people on the importance of it. I'm kind of wondering how you see, where that nexus is. It's one thing to put out reports, another thing to engage people. There's got to be some kind of balance. How do you see that? Do you think we should be doing more of the kind of thing that you've been telling us about? about, or maybe just differently? What's your view on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, and probably a couple of people in here know that when I started out as an undergrad, in going way back in high school, I was told that I'm just not that good at math and science because I'm a woman. So it's okay. Just, stick to my lane of writing. I was super good at writing. And so I went into college being in communications and really focused on communications, and I was deep into it. Everything from like layout and talking about color theory and how it affects the way that people process information. And then I, through taking what I thought were going to be the easiest gen ed courses I could find, natural disasters and astronomy, I found that I have a love of science, and I immediately wanted to be able to start talking about the things I was learning and tell friends or like make it interesting to other people. And so kind of in the background, I wasn't aware of what I was doing at the time, but I was trying to figure out what we now call science communication. And then I eventually became a scientist. I moved over into geoscience, and best decision I ever made. And I was lucky enough to have an advisor who I told her, I have this really big interest in being able to connect communications as well as science. Like, I think this is super important. And at the time, I was thinking that it would be in the form of journalism. And so, science journalism, especially writing feature stories about the interaction between people and their environment, that was super important to me. And I found that one way to get people to really care about a topic, a subject, about water quality, was to tell a personal story. And so that's something that I learned back in undergrad. As I went through life and things, I left school for a period of time. And I worked in a couple of other places, including in Missouri. And I was at a school garden where I was able to run their social media. And that kind of gave me an extra little bit of information on like how to communicate with people in terms of what do they really want to hear about and how to structure your message to get them to read the whole rest of the post, to like expand and show all. It also gave me an opportunity to learn more about, um, you know, kind of like baiting someone or like giving them just enough to get them interested that they reach out or they want to do something else. They want to come to a workshop. They want to come to something. And I learned that you don't have to get it all done in one thing. Like you don't have to try and communicate everything in one single document. You can, rely on the domino effect or cascade effect. Um, as I have gone on, I've learned more about science communication. We talked a lot about it in grad school, and that's where I really solidified my thoughts that, not only is it important for us to have people like my supervisor, Stephanie, who has a master's in environmental education, and you're, even tying in pedagogy into that, not just my mass communication side of it. But I really think that we have to put a lot of responsibility on scientists for communicating.
Mm.
Um, I have within some of my volunteerism, I am on some boards with some folks who are scientists, and I had an older gentleman who teaches within science who said, "Oh yeah, I participate in public stuff, but they talk about policy and whatnot," and I snore away, and then I'll pop up when they talk about science, and I'll engage there. And I would like to change that. I would like to see scientists be more involved in other ways, more involved in talking to decision makers and policymakers. So talking at that planning level, how do you communicate with those folks? And then I also want to see them be able to better communicate with the public, which is different than giving a lecture in class, which is hard for some people to understand. And really being able to teach to those different learning styles, not just in age ranges, but also in your multiple intelligences. And I'll leave it there because we're close.
No, those are some really good thoughts. Enjoyed hearing that. Anyone else have questions out there? I've been doing all of the questioning. If anyone else has questions, that would be great.
Kristen and I know each other well. I met her in undergrad. Again, best decision I ever made to go into geoscience. I met phenomenal people. And she brings up a good point in that, as I had kind of mentioned back when we were talking about the smart salting, the biggest influence that you can really have is that one-on-one. And it's not necessarily one-on-one from the city staff or the natural resource manager, but it's more that one-on-one between neighbor to neighbor or friend to friend. And that's how I have personally found my most effective kind of blasting or communication goes, is that I don't get a whole lot of response or feedback from like social media stuff unless people are my friends. They trust me, makes me a trusted source, which is a whole other topic that we can talk about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Aida puts a question in the chat. Do you have any strategies for engaging with homeowners versus renters? That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, so Maya, I'm going to guess that is maybe specifically in terms of smart salting. Homeowners, have a lot of concern over the damage that happens to their sidewalks. So that is a motivator for them. If you can educate them about, using too much salt really damages your sidewalks and your foundation and things like that. It'll kill your grass, it'll affect your trees and your flowers and all your vegetation. It'll look poopy in the summer too. So they are motivated by talking about that. Renters, a lot of times, I currently rent a house, and for me, we are responsible for our shoveling and stuff, which we're good with. But some renters, they don't take care of their own salting that's done by somebody else, a property manager, especially when you're talking about multifamily homes. So those larger apartment complexes and even like the developments of those complexes, those are done by someone whose job it is. And so I would recommend, if you are wanting to talk about smart salting with folks, and you know that those renters are not themselves responsible for the winter snow and ice removal, talk to the property manager and maybe find out if they contract it out, if it's someone in-house, and use that as your in to start with your little small conversations forward, and just like bring up smart salting and how you can save money and protect your investments. Find what motivates people.
And we were just about out of time here, but not that we have to quit right away. Stephanie says, I'd also like to shout out to the MPC Environmental Assistance Grant Program that helped fund the start of our smart salting program development. Yeah, great. If nobody else has any questions to ask of our speaker, I will say, hey, Sadie, thanks so much for agreeing to present your work and your perspectives on what you've been doing. It's really good to hear, and it would be great to hear more about the results of what you've been working on as we go forward. Really interesting engagement.
Well, thank you. I would be glad to come back next summer and give you the results of that smart salting.
Yeah, it'd be fun to hear about. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.